My name is Davies. I am a lead for the e-commerce partnerships at Google UK. I work with our top commerce partners in the UK, people like AutoTrader and eBay, to help them really think about how to make their business thrive in this digital future. And one of the things I want to focus on today is mobile, and specifically mobile for commerce. So just to set the scene, let's have a look at how mobile commerce is really growing over the last few years and why it really matters. Well, it was back in 2015 when Google went mobile first. And we did this because we saw that more of our searches were coming from mobile devices and more of our YouTube views were coming from mobile as well. This meant that we wanted to make sure that our platforms were best equipped to help our advertisers and publishers with this changing world, to help them think about their users rather than the platforms that the users are on. And this has become really ingrained in all that we do. So much so that we're now moving beyond it to think about its applications through artificial intelligence or machine learning. But there's still a lot that we can do with mobile. And this shift to online is not isolated to the likes of Google. It is really happening for commerce as well. In fact, this year, eMarketers think that 21% of all retail sales will come from e-commerce platforms. And let's not forget that we're already seeing that 80% of all store visits originate online first. And this is just in the UK. And we're not the most advanced. My favorite statistic of recent times comes from Alibaba during the recent China Singles Day. If you don't know what Singles Day is, it's basically their equivalent of Black Friday. And they saw on this day that 90% of sales were transacted on mobile devices. That's really huge and very impressive. So bringing it back to the UK, given what we now know, PayPal have recently done a study that has shown that a lack of mobile optimized sites is actually costing UK retailers £27 billion a year in lost sales. So there's clearly something to be done to optimize for this. So what is actually happening on mobile websites? Well, what we see is that about 88% of sites just simply mirror that of desktop, and only 12% of them are actually using the capabilities that a mobile phone enables. And there are great opportunities, and some of which are already being put into play. These are a few examples that I like. Amazon Go, if you've heard of this, it's their new people-less, cashless store that's all enabled from the use of the mobile phone. eBay recently built a Google Assistant integration, which drives through your app to enable voice purchases on their site. Or Wayfair, who've recently built an app that allows you to use augmented reality to place the objects that they sell in your home so you can really visualize what it looks like. And that's pretty cool. But that's just the beginning. You could do things like deep linking your store locations into Google walking directions to help your users get to your store, or QR codes, or augmented reality for in-store navigation. The possibilities are endless, and they're enabled because we have a mobile device, not a desktop. So what we want to think about today is how we can harness the power of mobile to really succeed online. And so I want to think about this in 3 steps. These 3 steps kind of mirror that of a user navigating through your site. The first is discovery, then engagement, and then finally the all-important conversion. So, discovery to start. We're going to look at this in 2 aspects. The first is discovery of your site, and that's going to be search. Next is navigation on site, helping the user get to the product that they're looking for. And as we mentioned, search is growing really rapidly. It was back in 2015 when mobile searches overtook those of desktop or tablet. This shows that there's loads of volume there to be grabbed with both hands for commerce. And shoppers are beginning to use this platform slightly more to help find what they're looking for. Amazon obviously retains the top spot at just about half of all first product searches, but search portals like Google are growing, and they've gone from 28% of share of that first product search back in 2017 to 36% last year. So there are tools that enable you to really harness this opportunity. In search on mobile, there's a number of unique features that you could use. Here I've got an example of product listings. This means that you can surface the product from your site directly on that first point of user interaction on that search screen. So here's an example of red dress, and you see that the user is already getting lots of options and prices immediately. The next is if you look at the in-search ads. Again, lots of supplementary information here, such as the fact that there's a promotion on 60% off sale. That's fairly enticing to a user. Or that the distance. This is using the mobile technology to know where the user is and help them locate their nearest store. In this case, it was done from my office, so it's 0.2 miles away. Next, moving on to navigation around the site. Google did a study with the Answer Lab to look at how users interact with the different sites. And they, on the basis of this, were able to design some key principles for retail site navigation and design. These fall into 4 main categories. The first is retail exploration and site search. This could be things like being aware of the language that the user is speaking, or the load page times that you're running with. With product details and reviews, this is allowing things like, can the user zoom in to get a better impression of what that product really looks like? Or, are you offering reviews and feedback to that user? Then moving on to frictionless shopping, this is things like ease of form filling, ease of navigation around the site through search bars, and the likes of that. And then finally, checkouts and payments. This is things like, are you surfacing promotions at the right point in the checkout process? Are you enabling users to edit their cart really easily, or indeed navigate away from the checkout and come back quite quickly? Now, a number of these topics we'll touch on later on, but just bear this in mind, there are these 4 key principles of navigation. So to round out this discovery section, I've got some best-in-class examples. The first is on-site search, and here we're using Staples. The good thing that they've got with this search is that it's easy to access from the little search icon. It allows you to browse through different departments and input the free text. It also has an autocorrect, so you don't need to worry about spelling it correctly. And it also surfaces recent searches, so you don't need to go back and do it all over again. It helps you with that. So, nice and simple. The next best-in-class example is navigation with Net-a-Porter. You can see here that the navigation bar is accessible from the top left of the screen. Both the categories and the subcategories are alphabetized just to make it really intuitive. And the other good thing about this is it's not just the browse categories that you might see, it's also access to user information because the account information is in here too. So that was discovery. We know how to get our users to the site, but how do we get them to engage more with us? So these we're going to look at in 2 different parts, speed and personalization. So first up, speed. 1, 2. 2 seconds. That's the magic number. Beyond 2 seconds and you will lose users. It's a very high bar, but it's the load time that we should be aiming for. But the average speed is above 2 seconds at the moment. We did a study with webpage test across 11 million sites globally, websites, and the average speed actually came in at 15.3 seconds. So quite a bit slower. But we should be pleased, here in the UK, retail isn't faring too badly. 3.8 seconds is the average, so pretty good, but still a little way to go. But why does this matter? Well, it matters because it directly impacts your bottom line. After 3 seconds, 53% of your visitors will simply leave the site. It won't load for them. Every 1 second delay impacts 20% rate on conversion. So you can see these are directly impacting the amount of sales that you will get. And just to loop it back to search, page speed is becoming part of our algorithm for determining search rankings from July forwards. So if you want your site to be considered good and mobile friendly, speed is something you have to think about. So, I did a little bit of a competition between my fellow IRX presenters' sites. I used webpagetest.org, and we did it for John Lewis, Argos, Made.com, Wiggle, and Screwfix. I thought it would be just interesting to see how they all come in and what their page load speeds are. The things to look at in this video when we run it are first load on screen. So when does the first image actually appear on the screen? Time to completion, which site finishes first? And the thing that we can't really see here, but you should also look for, are first user interaction. So when the user can make the first scroll or the first click. So, can we run the video, please? So, let's see, who's got the first load on the screen? Screwfix, but swiftly followed by Argos, who complete their load in 6.9 seconds. Then we have John Lewis, then Wiggle, and then Made.com. Now, Made.com goes on for a little bit. This was run on a 3G network, and I think perhaps the carousel that they've got loading and the money off coupon that will appear perhaps are contributing to that. But when we see this, suddenly that 15.3 seconds doesn't seem so hugely high and unrealistic, because actually we're coming in not too far off that. Thank you. So, what can we do about this? Well, the first thing is you need to do this kind of test for yourself. And there are tools out there to help you really measure this. You need to think like a store. In the same way that you want to know that all of your shops are fully staffed, open, and up and running to the best of their abilities, you need to know that that mobile website that you have is doing exactly the same. Because as we saw, 80% of visits originate online. These are a few examples of the tools that we have to begin measuring this. The first is Test My Site with Google. That'll give you some basic introductory metrics, speeds, and things that you can improve. The next is Lighthouse Score. This is more of a developer eye view, and it gives you more technical information on what could be improved. And then finally, the Mobile Impact Calculator. I think often with these things, the hardest thing is to build a business case and to assign a value to what a speed improvement could mean. And that's exactly what this tool helps you do, to evaluate a user and look at it alongside speed improvements. And once you've measured it, there are some tools out there and technologies to help you begin improving. So, quick show of hands, who's heard of either of these two technologies? Oh, excellent. Good stuff. All right, so I'll go over them briefly to make sure that everybody knows. The first of them is AMP, or Accelerated Mobile Pages. AMP is a lightweight HTML format that allows pages to load super fast and super reliably. It was originally designed for static news sites that meant that those pages could load in less than 1 second. But it's extended and it's now in good use for commerce sites as well. What we're seeing with AMP is that users tend to spend about 2.5 times longer on those pages than they do on non-AMP pages. We've also seen through A/B tests with some of our commerce partners that it can drive up to 20% more conversions simply by fact of it being faster. So AMP deals with the initial page load. Then we have Progressive Web Apps, PWA, which deals with the second, third, and subsequent loads after that. This is based on a service worker platform that enables you to have some really native app-like functionalities but all running from the browser. It gives you some limited offline capabilities, so users don't have to be connected. It has data storage capacity for things like form filling. And it also allows you to do proper engagement through push notifications and things like offers. Using both of these in parallel will mean that you've got a really best-in-class commerce platform and mobile experience for your consumers. So here we have a best-in-class example again. This is Debenhams. The old site is your usual site. The new site is running a PWA, Progressive Web App. Ooh. Loading. So basically you can see that the site is much faster, despite our slightly dodgy internet. It's much faster, it's about 2 times faster. Users can complete a checkout in under 30 seconds on this new site. And the time to build it was just 4 months, which is much faster than the typical 18-month development cycle of a full app. They did this in conjunction with a company called Mobify, as well as Google. And although it's early days, they're really pleased with the results. We can just skip on past that. Cool. So we've done speed. Now let's look at personalization. Personalization is really important. In fact, 63% of consumers expect brands to personalize their experience based on past interactions. Personalization isn't about following you around the web. It's about giving you a much more relevant and engaging experience. Think of it like a concierge service for your consumers on site, in the same way that you might have a personal shopper in store. And it's so expected now that Accenture did a recent study that found that 41% of users would actually abandon a brand in the US if it didn't offer some sort of personalization of content. Given the wealth of data and information that we have about users today, we can do this kind of scenario. For example, if I were going to a grocer's site, I probably don't want to get served an ad for a razor, but I might like to get served an ad for my favorite hair product, or a promotional voucher for one of the beauty brands that I typically buy. That's relevant content for me. And it's enabled by technology. That technology might be a bespoke personalization engine, or it could be something a little bit more mainstream like an ad server. But what you want to look for in that technology are the 3 things it enables. The first is that it should be real time. It's about getting the right message to the right user at the right time. Then targeting. We've got lots of information, so that content that you're serving should be targeted to that user based on the data that you have about them to make sure it's truly relevant. And lastly, conversions. Here we would expect to see a real uplift in conversions because you've helped the user get to what they're looking for much more quickly. Also, if you use this type of technology, it tends to be more measurable, so you can analyze the results and improve again for next time. So as we said, leverage the data that you've got about your audiences and use it for either content or ads as you choose. Now, a best-in-class example, just to wrap this section up on personalization. We did a study with Argos to see how effective this could be. Google Marketing spent money on a Chromecast campaign. That Chromecast campaign was targeted only to TV buyers. When they completed the checkout process, at the end of their process, they were served this banner ad for a Chromecast that linked in to where they could actually buy that on the Argos site. The good thing about this is it was frequency capped, so the same user didn't get bombarded with the same content as you would typically if it was hard-coded in your CMS. And the results were really positive. We had 3 times uplift in click-through rate, which drove an uplift in sales as a result. So super positive, personalization works. And finally, moving on to our last section today, conversions. The last step in the user journey and the last thing we'll think about here. There are 3 ways to optimize mobile conversions: signing up and signing in, forms, and payments. But a little bit of context to frame this. Conversion paths are changing. Chrome released a blog post recently that stated that they actually autofill 9 billion passwords and forms each month in Chrome. That's a huge number. People just aren't liking to have to fill them out themselves. Also, the way shoppers are behaving is changing. 80% of baskets now contain just a single product. So it's much more about high frequency and immediacy than it was in previous years. So, signing up and signing in, or indeed not signing up or signing in. 35% of users will abandon a checkout process if they have to sign in and they don't want to. If they don't already have an account, the casual shopper does not want to give you lots of personal information. So if we give them the option to check out as a guest, as in this Michael Kors screenshot, they're more likely to continue the process. An alternative to check out as guest is to allow the social sign up. So you can see either Google or Facebook, or it could be something else, here in this example. But that in turn can also cause some confusion. Which one do I choose? Maybe I shouldn't choose one. Maybe I should just use my password. Wait, what is my password? Oh, I've forgotten. And it goes on and it gets complicated. As a result of this, we've built an API called the one-tap login. This means that when you first sign into that site, you choose which you're logging in with, you choose your account, and it will remember that for future use. So, YOLO, you only log in once. And it'll automatically sign you in. Job2Me, the UK job site, actually implemented this, and they have seen 21% uplift in subscriptions as a result, and 15% on average, higher return per user. So really positive so far. Then with forms. I'll keep this really simple. It should just be simple. Less is definitely more when it comes to forms. Think about limiting your exit points, reducing screen clutter, and keeping them really short. Where they do go over more than one page, make sure the user knows where they are in the flow, as in this made.com example. If the form is overly complicated, 27% of users will simply abandon it. So let's try to keep it short. And finally, payments. Perhaps the most tricky bit, because this is the bit where you have to get your card out and enter all the information. We want to make this as simple as possible, and there are things you can do. We've developed the Payments API that eliminates the need for both the forms that we've discussed and that need to get out your credit card and put in the information. It uses the details you've already stored in your account to autofill the form and make it really simple. Using this API reduces the number of taps a user has to input down from 120 on average to 3. That's a significant time saving. And the good thing about it is it also integrates with multiple types of payments. Alipay, Samsung Pay, Google Pay, they're all integrated into this, which is important because millennials have been found in the US to be less likely to have a credit card. In fact, 65% of them don't have a credit card, and this is a trend we could see rippling further. So finally, a best-in-class example to wrap this up. This is a website called ThreadUp. They are a second-hand clothing store. The good thing about this is that their form is super simple. It's using the auto-populate, and you don't have to put in your payments information. It allows you to check out really quickly, and that's the beauty of it. So, to summarize, today we've talked about 3 really important aspects of mobile commerce. and the 3 things that you need to begin assigning metrics to and measuring to make sure that your site is a real success. There was discovery, and that's how to get users to your site and how to help them navigate around your site. Then with engagement, we were thinking about speed and the tools that are there to help you, like AMP and PWA. And then conversions, making forms short, keeping it simple, making the login process as easy as possible. Ultimately, all of these will drive increased revenue for your business. That's why we're so keen to help you get it right. We've already seen a number of the stats. 1 second equals 20% lost conversions. There are things out there to help you begin assigning value to this and building your business case. So I hope this has been really useful. It's been great to chat with you today. And I think we've got...
Yep. Thank you.
Elisa goes up at the end.
Thanks, it's great.
There you
Have
go.
have we got a
Yeah.
slide? Right. Are you all right for a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Right, there are some microphones and we've got a few minutes for questions, so if you could put your hand up and someone will come round and... It's hard to see up here. Is there some... Oh, there's one down here. You'll have to wait a bit.
Hi, it was very interesting, Sarah. Thanks.
Yeah.
First of all, I was disappointed that I'm Stuart from Shure. I'm disappointed that we weren't part of your speed test comparisons. I think we would have beat them all, but never mind. It's great that you brought up progressive web apps, and I guess you probably reckon that most new people are thinking about apps are probably going down. Are they going down the PWA route as opposed to native? Do you think?
I think what we're seeing is there's not enough yet around PWA, which is why we're trying to advocate it. Traditional app development is expensive and lengthy, and more people are tending to use mobile and mobile websites. They don't want to download stuff anymore. And moving to a PWA means that the actual load of that on your phone is about 1% of a traditional app. So for the user, it's a much better experience, and that's what we'd hope that, you know, if you had the choice as a publisher, website publisher, you would choose to go with the PWA route, but it's still very early days.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Do you think people will move away from native apps to PWAs in time?
It's hard to know at this stage. I think there are still a lot of things that apps can do that PWAs maybe haven't got to yet. You know, such as the augmented reality type stuff. You want to be really very clever with the technology. I don't know if that's all possible yet with PWA.
Have we got time to ask one more?
Anybody else with a question? Guy next to you, you may have another turn. Anybody else, just stick your hand up and I'll get over.
Sorry, AMP. I was clear on PWAs, how they interact, but I didn't quite pick up the relationship with AMP. So we have dynamic content at the moment. How does that fit with the AMP as the first hop?
So AMP is really there as your initial page load. So if a user is going from the search portal onto your web page, that's the bridge that it really makes, and it makes that really fast and reliable, but it only does that first page load, and the interaction on those pages is slightly limited, which is why we would then hope that you would transition into that PWA for the second, third, and subsequent page loads. Because it's kind of like it's being pre-cached in the background, but we can't pre-cache everything.
Okay, anybody else? Before we pass... Oh, you got somebody.
I have a question about the sign-in function, the signing in with social media. As a company, when a customer does that bypass tracking entirely in terms of who that person was if they don't buy anything?
I'm not actually sure of the answer of that. I'm not an expert on the sign-in with social. I think you would need to look into that, I'm afraid.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, any more? Any on the left? Okay, well, if that's all there is, then once again, round of applause for Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.